I handed my fiancé back his 7-year relationship and our 3-year engagement in the form of a diamond ring. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I refused to be the other woman in his relationship with his mother. My world is built on contracts, commitments, and the clear, unshakable logic of cause and effect. As a lawyer, I live by the principle that agreements matter. For 7 years, my fiancé, Michael, an RN with a heart as big as the sky, was my partner in that world. We weren't just a couple, we were a unit building a life, a future, and now, raising our beautiful 7-month-old daughter. The stakes weren't about a wedding, they were about the sanctity of our family. My greatest principle is that the family you choose, the one you build with your partner, must come first. My deepest fear was that I had chosen a man who was incapable of making that same choice. The antagonist in my story isn't a villain from a fairy tale. She's a petite, soft-spoken woman named Carol, my future mother-in-law. She operates not with a dagger, but with a gentle, concerned tone that drips poison into every major decision we try to make. Her masterpiece of manipulation came a year ago. We loaned her $8,000 of our own savings, money we were putting aside for a house, so she wouldn't lose hers. 2 months later, when we tried to set a wedding date, she sat us down, her brow furrowed with that signature worry, and said, "With your money situation being so tight, kids, don't you think you should wait?" We had finally decided. August. It was going to be a simple, beautiful wedding in my mom's backyard, surrounded by 3 acres of green grass and a shimmering pond. A potluck. Low cost, low stress. Perfect. Michael had looked me in the eyes and promised, "I'm tired of listening to her. This is our date." Last weekend, it all came crashing down. My mother and Carol were over for dinner. The air was filled with the scent of roasted chicken and the happy babble of our daughter. I was excitedly talking to my mom, discussing the soft lavender color I hoped she'd wear as my matron of honor. From across the table, Carol's voice cut through the warmth. "So, when were you planning on telling me you'd picked a date?" Michael, bless his heart, tried. "We were going to tell everyone at the same time, Mom." "Oh," that was all she said. One syllable, but it was a black hole that sucked all the joy out of the room. She got quiet, a wounded, silent martyr, and left 20 minutes later. Michael, ever the dutiful son, had already made plans to go to her house to fix her cable box, a task that conveniently required his immediate attention. He left shortly after, leaving me with my mom and a suddenly sour glass of wine. As I watched his car pull away, a cold dread snaked its way up my spine. He was walking right back into the spider's web. I knew exactly what was happening in that house. It wouldn't be a lecture. It would be a masterclass in emotional manipulation, filled with sighs, disappointed looks, and questions framed as loving concern. He promised, I told myself, but the thought felt hollow. He promised this time would be different. When Michael got home hours later, the silence he brought with him was heavier than lead. He was quiet, distant, and when I asked if everything was okay, he just mumbled that he was tired and went to bed. The next night, as I was feeding the baby, he dropped the bomb. He didn't look at me. He just said, at random, "You know, my mom kind of has a point. Maybe we should wait until we buy a house. Our living situation is a bit unstable." She's not wrong. I didn't respond. A chilling, crystalline calm washed over me. The anger was so pure, so cold, it felt like ice water in my veins. This wasn't a discussion. This was a verdict. He kept talking, digging his own grave. "It'll only be a couple more years," he said, trying to sound reasonable. 5 at the most. 5 years. Another 5 years on hold for a woman who would find another excuse the moment the ink was dry on a mortgage. I walked over to him, the baby settled in her rocker. I took a deep breath, and with a hand that did not shake, I twisted the engagement ring off my finger. It felt surprisingly light. I held it out to him in my open palm. "I'm no longer interested," I said, my voice as calm and flat as a frozen lake. He stared at the ring, then at my face, his eyes wide with confusion and panic. "What are you talking about?" He tried to grab my hand, to force the ring back on my finger. I pulled back. "I am no longer interested in marrying you," I stated, enunciating each word. "Maybe you should move back home with Mommy. Because I have zero business being with a man who has no backbone and would put our lives on hold for a woman who still wants to scrub his back in the shower." The words were cruel, designed to cut, and they did. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. The tears started welling in his eyes. He started crying, protesting, begging, but the sound was distant. I was already gone. "I want you to leave," I said. "Or I can leave. Those are the only 2 options." He left, sobbing the entire way out the door. The sound of his car starting was the sound of my 7-year relationship dying. I felt gutted, hollowed out. But I also felt free. My phone started buzzing less than an hour later. It was Carol. The first text was feigned innocence. "Michael just showed up here in tears. What on earth happened?" Then came the guilt. "I don't know what you said to him, but you are tearing this family apart." And finally, the veiled threat. "You can't just decide to keep my granddaughter from me." It was a full-scale assault. She wasn't trying to mediate. She was trying to prove that she still had control. This was her victory lap. My first strike provoked her massive overreaction. She thought she was pounding the final nail in my coffin, but all she did was confirm my decision. I typed out one final reply before blocking her number forever. "No, it's fine, you won. Now you can have your baby boy back full-time." The system I was now caught in wasn't legal, but social. My friends, the people I thought would have my back, became a jury that found me guilty of overreacting. You just threw away 7 years, my friend Sarah said over the phone, her voice laced with disbelief. So he's close with his mom, big deal. All guys are mama's boys. You're just hormonal from the baby. Each conversation was the same. They saw a lover's quarrel. I saw a battle for the soul of my family. Their lack of understanding was a special kind of hell, making me feel utterly and completely alone. Was I crazy? Was I the villain in my own story? Just as I started to drown in self-doubt, the life rafts appeared. My mother. She showed up the next morning, took one look at my face and simply said, "I've put the kettle on." She didn't offer advice. She held the baby, listened to me recount the entire sordid history, and when I was done, she put her hand on mine. "I saw how she looked at you at dinner," she said, her voice firm. "Like you were stealing something that belonged to her. You did the only thing you could do to protect yourself and that little girl. I am a lawyer. I am my own expert." That night, I sat down at my desk and did what I do best. I removed the emotion and analyzed the facts. I created a timeline. Save the date number 1, postponed due to financial concerns. Save the date number 2, postponed due to venue not being special enough. Save the date number 3, postponed until daughter is old enough to be a flower girl. Save the date number 4, postponed to buy a house first. It was a clear, documented pattern of interference and breach of contract, the contract of our partnership. Seeing it in black and white, I wasn't a heartbroken fiancé anymore. I was a lawyer with an airtight case. My older brother, Mark, who had witnessed Carol's behavior at countless family events, called me. "I just heard," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "First question, are you okay? Second question, what took you so long? Thank God you finally did it. We've all seen this coming for years." A week passed. The house was quiet, filled with the ghosts of a life we were supposed to have. The lowest point came on a Tuesday night. The baby was asleep. I was folding laundry and found one of Michael's old, gray t-shirts that he always wore to bed. The faint scent of him, of our life together, hit me like a physical blow. The stupid calm I had wrapped around myself shattered into a million pieces. The reality of it all crashed down on me. I was a single mother. I had blown up my family. I curled up on the floor, clutching that stupid t-shirt, and I wept. Gut-wrenching, soul-tearing sobs. My finger hovered over his contact in my phone. I was so close to texting him, to telling him to come home, that we could fix this. But then I looked at the baby monitor, at our perfect, sleeping daughter, and I knew I couldn't. Not yet. He showed up the next day unannounced. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen, and he had lost weight. This was our courtroom. He stood in the doorway, and I stood my ground in the living room. He presented his mother's case as his own. "She's just worried about us, that's all. She wants us to be stable before we get married. She just loves me." Now I was the lawyer. I began my cross-examination, my voice steady. The first time she was worried, it was about money. So we stabilized her finances by loaning her $8,000. Did that fix it? Well, no, but. The second time it was the venue. The third it was our daughter's age. Now it's the house. I'll ask you again, Michael. What will the excuse be after we buy a house? What happens when she decides our street isn't safe enough? Or that our daughter needs to be potty trained first? When does it end? He had no answer. He just stood there, deflated. I had held one piece of evidence back. Now it was time to use it. The nuke. This was never about a house, Michael. And it's not about stability. You and I both know it. I took a step closer. This is about a woman who, to this day, talks with fondness about the memory of forcing her way into the shower with her 16-year-old son after he broke his leg and told her he didn't want her help. It's about a sickness, an obsession. And I will not have my daughter raised in the shadow of it. I will not have her think that that is what love looks like. Checkmate. The color drained from his face. He looked at me as if he'd never truly seen me, or his mother, before. He was shattered. The foundation of his reality had been cracked open. I pressed my advantage, not with anger, but with a clear, non-negotiable contract. "I love you, Michael. I think you love me. But I cannot and I will not marry you until you are in individual therapy, and we are in couples counseling together. The wedding is off. This conversation is over until a licensed professional confirms that you understand what it means to be a partner." A few days later, it happened. Carol, realizing her puppet's strings had been cut, made her last sloppy stand. She showed up at the house, ringing the doorbell insistently. Michael had come over with the agreed-upon purpose of discussing a visitation schedule for our daughter. He was the one who answered the door. "I was just in the neighborhood and wanted to see my granddaughter," Carol chirped, trying to push past him. And then the miracle. Michael put a hand on the door, blocking her entry. "Mom," he said, his voice shaking but firm. "You can't just show up here. You need to call first. This isn't a good time." He stood his ground as she sputtered, her sweet facade melting away to reveal the raw, controlling anger beneath. He just kept repeating, "You need to leave now, Mom." Finally, she retreated. He closed the door, the click of the lock echoing in the silent house. He turned to me, his face a mixture of terror, grief, and a dawning, breathtaking clarity. The true victory wasn't him closing the door on her. It was him walking to the counter, picking up his phone, and looking up the number for a family therapist he had been referred to. The climax of our story was the quiet tapping of a phone number. It was the moment he finally chose us. The months that followed were hard. They were filled with sterile therapist offices and difficult, painful conversations. The engagement ring stayed in my jewelry box, a cold, silent reminder of what we had almost lost. We weren't planning a wedding. We were rebuilding a partnership from the studs. Carol's reign was over. Her access was now limited to scheduled supervised visits. She had lost her power, and the family and friends who had once sided with her now saw the situation for what it was. Her narrative of the crazy, hormonal fiancé had crumbled, replaced by the truth of a son who had finally established a boundary. A year later, we bought a house. A small, perfect starter home we chose together. One warm summer evening, as we sat on our new porch watching our daughter, now a confident toddler, chase fireflies across the lawn, Michael turned to me. He didn't have the old ring. He had a new one, a simple, elegant sapphire that matched my eyes. "I failed you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I broke our contract. I want to start over. I want to spend the rest of my life proving I am the man you and our daughter deserve. Will you marry me for real this time?" I said yes. Not to the boy who loved his mommy, but to the man who had fought his way back to me. Our wedding was 3 months later, in that same backyard, by that same pond. It was perfect. And Carol? She found out the same way everyone else did. When she received the invitation in the mail. Our life wasn't just back to normal. It was better. It was real. It was ours.